Hello, today we are going to talk about what the problem really is and what the problem isn't when you're struggling with an alcohol problem. Because I think many people get lost in thinking that this is the problem, this is the thing here that needs to be fixed. And if that was fixed, then everything would be better and I'd drink less. I speak from personal experience because this is what I did. I Before I stopped drinking, I at the time thought my problem was a rare mental health disorder. I had really bad anxiety and really bad panic attacks, and it made my life extremely difficult every day. And I looked for help all over the place. I was given various prescriptions, I was given various diagnoses, and I needed to drink because I had such bad anxiety. Like I couldn't imagine not drinking. I didn't know how I would cope because alcohol was the only thing at the time that was really effective in taking the edge off of my anxiety and panic and all those kind of things. So to be honest with you, it didn't occur to me that I had a drinking problem. I drank like my peer group and we were all binge drinkers. So I didn't really think that I needed to stop, maybe kind of cut it down a little bit here and there, but I didn't think alcohol was the problem. I thought it was other things. Now, I also thought romantic relationships were a train wreck for me. And I thought the problem was that I just hadn't met the right one. If I could just meet the right one, everything would be so much better, right? I'd just be so much happier. So I thought that was the problem. I definitely thought members of my family were the problem. I had some problematic family members and I thought that they were the problem. And if they changed, if they weren't like this, if they didn't do these things or say these things, then everything would just go so much easier and smoother, and that they are definitely the problem. I thought my job was the problem, like I had the wrong job, so I changed jobs a lot. I also thought where I lived was the problem, and we call this geographicals. I have moved continents 7 times. It's expensive. So I would be somewhere for a couple of years. Then at the beginning, it was always like, oh, it's so much better here. And then it would, by the end of it, I'd burnt bridges. I was unhappy. Everything else was the problem. And I'd do a big move. And a big move is really distracting. That's like at least 6 months of not having to think about what's really going on because moving just takes up so much time and energy. So I used to think where I lived, like not just like where I lived, the neighborhood, like the country was the problem. And I had to move somewhere else. So what happens is you can't change this until we get very, very clear on what the problem really is. And it isn't any of those things. The problem is alcohol. Alcohol is what makes all of those things so much harder and a much bigger struggle. And I want to say a big part of this is actually dealing with people, right? This is a massive life skill, being able to deal with people. People are people, right? They do and say all kinds of crazy stuff, just like we do. Dealing with people and relationships can be really difficult for some of us. It was really difficult for me. I was highly sensitive. I took everything personally. I didn't like have great skills. I didn't have good boundaries, all of that kind of stuff. So when you drink too much, it takes up a lot of bandwidth. Bandwidth is energy and space to think thoughts. And my drinking took up probably 40 or more percent, about 40, maybe 50% of my available bandwidth was spent thinking about drinking, thinking about not drinking, recovering from drinking and drinking, right? My bandwidth was spent on alcohol. So I only had about maybe 50 or 60% of my bandwidth, which is energy and space to think thoughts, to run my life. So there's only, I could function, but I couldn't thrive. I could like function, but I couldn't grow or have goals or take opportunities, right? You're like treading water. There's just a lot that goes into treading water. You're not drowning, but you're just not going anywhere. But you won't be able to see this. You can't see it when you're in it, just how much time and energy and bandwidth alcohol is sucking out of your life. It's way more than you think it is. We just, because we are so good at rationalizing our drinking to ourselves, rationalizing that it's not a problem, rationalizing that it's not that bad, or, it's blah, blah, blah. So before we can work on any of these other things, we got to get alcohol out of our lives. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you're like me and you've suffered from anxiety and depression and anxiety, those are horrible experiences, then removing alcohol will dramatically improve your mental health. Dramatically. It probably won't happen in the space of a week, but it will happen gradually over time. Because alcohol causes anxiety, right? So over a few months, over a few weeks, your depression and your anxiety is going to get better. Now, imagine how much better your day is going to go if the anxiety and depression that you experience has come down a bit, right? Maybe it's not all gone, but maybe it's come down, right? Imagine how much better your week would go, right? I'm going to tell you, it's a stark comparison. So much better. It's just going to go so much better when you're not fighting a daily battle with yourself. So that's number one. You'll sleep better. Imagine how much better your day is going to go if you're sleeping better. Relationships, right? We can say really stupid things when we're drinking and mess up relationships. But just dealing with people when you're hungover, right? When you have zero tolerance. Imagine how much your relationships are going to improve with your kids, with your partner, with your colleagues, when you're not irritable and snappy and hungover and have like nothing in the tank to give. Do you think your relationships will just be a bit better? Will you be a bit more patient? Will you be a bit more tolerant? Will you be able to maybe be clearer in communicating things? I know something that I did a lot because I was hungover was I would kind of, I don't know, maybe agree to something in the short term just to get out of like the situation I was in that moment, because I just felt so awful. And then I just really regret it later. I was always getting myself into pickles. Always. I was always out of the frying pan into the fire. Always. Like not ever able to see what I was doing. Like, you're going to have more clarity. Like, clarity is very undervalued. So you're going to have more clarity to see what is going on. You're going to have more energy to just deal with life, deal with all of the stuff that needs to be done, because there's a lot, right? There's a lot if you've got a family and a job and all that kind of house to run. You're just going to have more energy. So it is a big mistake to believe that the problem is all of the things outside of you. It's not. This is where you've got to start. Control what you can control. We can't control other people. We have very limited control over circumstances. All we can control is our response to them. And we have no control over what is going to change, right? Maybe there'll be a miracle and the difficult people you have to deal with, maybe it's a spouse or a colleague, maybe a miracle happen and the next day they'll just be really amazing and like cool and like, that's not going to happen. Unlikely. Okay. Control what you can control. So this is a you problem. It was a me problem. It was not about the world changing to suit me. It was not about other people changing to suit me. It was about me realizing that I was the problem, and it started with alcohol. And I had rationalized that alcohol wasn't a problem. My drinking wasn't a big deal. But the lie of that was really clear once I had stopped for a while, because the change in my life was night and day. And all that had changed at that point was that I wasn't drinking. But the difference, like, I couldn't avoid seeing how different my life was and how differently I felt. And then that kind of begins to snowball, right? Because for me, to begin to feel free of anxiety and the depression, that was huge for me. Like I was looking for the right doctor to prescribe me the right thing and give me the right treatment, right? So I could just still carry on drinking. It just is not going to work like that. The difference alcohol will make when you remove it and you're sober to your mental health will be extraordinary. Now, you have to give this some time because early sobriety is not how it is long term. It's going to feel better each day, right? It's going to start ticking up each day. But early sobriety is at least roughly a year, and a lot of that is brain chemistry. So just know you need time for your brain chemistry to really fully recover. But it's going to be on an upward trajectory, even if maybe today you can't see anything changing. Just stay with it, stay with it. And what then happens is we just get this different perspective. Like we have this like contrast of life with alcohol, life without alcohol. Different. I have a program below, by the way. Check it out because it will help. And that was the bit I had to get really clear on, was what the problem is and what the problem isn't. Because a lot of the things that I thought were the problem in my life, and if only they were fixed, I'd be better. A lot of those things actually just kind of went once I got sober. They just like things just were not, just employment, right? I was able to be on time. I was able to do what I said I was going to do. I was reliable. Right, that just solved a lot of problems, right? Not making this chaos in my professional life solved a lot of problems. And then there's always layers to this, right? The next layer was once I'd been sober, for me, it was about 18 months and life was so much better, just so much better in so many different levels. And I was really beginning to see like sobriety could be fun, and I really didn't want to go back. Then the next layer that I had to peel off was being emotionally sober, right? That got me so far. And then I had to learn how to be emotionally sober. And emotional sobriety took some time and effort and energy, but was really worth it. And here's the thing. Emotional sobriety, for me, it's just personal development. It's the development of oneself. Everybody has to do this. If I had not had the crisis and catastrophe of having a serious alcohol problem, well, I never would have stopped drinking. And then I never would have started on this personal development journey that has been transformational, completely transformational. I'd love to know what you think in the comments below.